Okay, we're back. John, time for the next box.
Time for the next box.
Cromwell's.
No.
T34s?
Yes.
Okay.
So.
Okay, these are not bagged.
These are not bagged. There's a lot of loose stuff in this. I like this.
I see men.
I see men too.
What the hell? Are there tank riders?
We have tank riders.
We have Soviet tank riders in this box, ladies and gents.
Oh, those are awesome.
That is... Well, they've actually went to the bother of it. Yeah, because they're
some
designed
infantry,
to sit.
so yeah. Well, no, they're not designed to sit, but some of them are kneeling and sitting. Well, yeah.
I think they are
You can make them
to
fit.
sit on it.
You can make them fit. We'll talk about that shortly.
Okay.
So,
right.
This is the T34-85 medium Soviet tank.
Yep. Again, these things you could make in a hole in the ground.
And they did.
And they're so simple.
Yep. Now, this takes the crown for the most produced tank in World War II.
Right.
This was a final production run of somewhere around 75 to 80,000 of these things built.
Wow.
So they nearly made a third more of these than the Americans made of Shermans.
Yeah, and I assume they just completely blew the German production out the water.
Absolutely. I mean, the Russian production of T-34s alone was nearly double what Germany built in tanks during the war. Now, this is one of the tanks that was argued to be one of the best in the world at the time.
Right.
Because it has several features that were relatively new to tank design. So we have, first off, we have sloping armor.
Yes. So the idea that if it's this thick flat and you turn it, that line is longer.
That at a 45-degree angle, you've essentially doubled the thickness of the armor plate.
Not to mention the fact that when it hits it, you have that chance of deflection.
Yep. So you have a slight chance of deflection on there as well. That proved a lot of trouble to German gunners in the early war stages when they first came across these things. Because at the time, most German anti-tank guns were 37 or 40 millimeter or 50 millimeter. And they found that even 50 mil shots were bouncing off these things. Panzer IIIs couldn't get through the front of a T-34. The second thing that this tank used was wide track.
Yeah.
It used wide track with an American-designed suspension system called Christie suspension.
Yes. Which I think had been used in the BT-7 before it.
Yes, exactly. It was a very similar design. J. Walter Christie came up with this fantastic design for tank suspension, which would allow tanks to travel at, if they had the engine for it, 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, now that's scary.
That is scary. The Americans, of course, thought he was a lunatic, and they were probably right in thinking that as well, because he was a bit mad. But during the trials of some of his vehicles, the Russians were there, and they went, that's not a bad idea. That's a fast tank. We can make fast tanks. Yeah. So they bought a couple of the prototypes, took them back to Russia.
And reverse engineered.
They reverse engineered. They came up with the BT series, which was the light tank, which proved completely ineffective at the start.
But they're fun to drive in World of Tanks.
They're fun to drive in World of Tanks. They then went on to the T-34. And the T-34, just for whatever reason, whether it was because of the sloped armor or if it was just because of the wide track of the Christie suspension, they developed a tank that came out and was worlds away from the nearest German rival. The Panzer IV was basically the equivalent to the T-34 at the time when they first sort of faced each other.
And when you require so much less engineering to produce this and be on the same level, it just puts it in a league of its own.
It's, as a couple of historians have said, Germany considered Russia to be full of subhumans.
Yes.
Now, for people that Germany considered to be subhumans to come up with a tank that was beating them senseless every time they found one, that's an impressive feat. And it even made the Germans stop and go, whoa, where did this come from?
Yeah.
And these things were being produced everywhere. There was tractor factories building them in Stalingrad during the siege. These things were rolling out without paint. They were just...
Let me guess, end of the assembly line, there's the next crew. Right, it's off the assembly line, jump in, go.
They welded them together, they didn't put any paint on them, and they just got the crew to hop in. And when that rolled out of a tractor factory in the middle of the Stalingrad siege, it was as ready to fight as if you'd spent another 2 days painting it. It was ready to go. Something else that made this a very effective tank, not just because of its arm limit, we'll get to that, was the engine.
Right.
Now, the engine is a V12 diesel.
Right.
And it's one of the only diesel engine tanks that's seen service in Europe.
Right.
Now, the reason for that was probably twofold. They expected the Russian tanks to be doing more hours per day in the battlefield.
Yeah.
And for the longer you need something to be running, the more efficient it is to run a diesel.
Yeah.
The second, and probably the most important thing, diesel has a lower freezing point than petrol.
Okay, that's a very important point whenever you're fighting on the steppes.
Exactly. So that bad winter during the Stalingrad siege, 41, 42, 42 and 43.
I'll assume the Germans had engine trouble with petrol freezing sometimes, while the Russians were just sitting there going,
A lot of the Germans said they had to light small campfires underneath the back of the tank just to get enough heat into the engine bay to let the engine turn over.
Wow.
So with the Russians using diesel, diesels also had an air cold start system.
Right.
So instead of relying solely on the starter motor of the engine, the electrical power, it had a gas cylinder in the front. You switched the gas cylinder on. That turned the engine over by pouring air into the cylinders and making the engine turn. All you then had to do was engage your petrol or your diesel.
Yeah, so suddenly it's already rolling. It's just getting the fuel in there to spark and then just take on its own.
Yep. So that's... And I've seen Russian tanks, I've seen T-34s for sale that haven't been ran since 1950, and they're still starting and running no problem because that engine is just so rough and just so rugged. Yeah,
but just Russian engineering in general seems to be like that. I mean, like you showed me a thing on YouTube. There was a tank set up as a memorial, and I think it was protesters or something jumped onto it
and got the thing going.
Yeah, whenever it hadn't ran in X number of years.
Yep.
You know, and it was just sitting out in the rain, rusting, being dilapidated, whatever you like. Off we go.
And it went. But, you know, having said that, Russia did put some very nice, I don't know what you would call it, very delicate work into T-34 as well.
Right.
The turret traverse, for one, it had two modes. It had manual mode and it had electric.
Okay.
Like a lot of the Shermans and all that stuff. Yeah. They had hydraulic or electric as well as manual. And the system, say, for example, in Sherman turret traverse, you have a handle here, which is electric, and you have the handle up here, which is manual.
Yeah.
T-34 has it all in one control.
What?
T-34 has a disc, which has a handle on it.
Right.
You crank the handle to do it manually.
Right.
You fold the handle into it, and then you do that, and that's your electric
So
traverse.
it suddenly becomes a joystick. That's a little bit space age for World War II.
It's amazing when people say that T-34 was so simple and basic, and then you had something so refined as, you know, a dual-purpose traverse system.
I'll assume there was just one Russian who was a little bit more upper crust, just said, right, you're designing this bit. Well, I'll make something a little bit nicer.
So yeah, we'll move on to the sprue while we...
All right, let's have a look.
We'll look at the bottom first.
Okay, let's start from the ground up.
So from the ground up, we have our track.
Nice wide track, and I see what you mean. Those things are just really wavy across the top.
Yep.
For those upper tracks.
And this track ran so slack because if you'd made it to be a proper tension track, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't turn at all.
I assume the Christie suspension wouldn't kick in or something?
No, hang on. The teeth on the track are very big. They're they're like a triangular shape, curved triangular shape.
Right.
And the sprocket wheel doesn't have teeth; it has rollers.
Right.
So it's the wheel is in two pieces. So say this is one half of the wheel, this is the other half of the wheel.
Right.
You have a bearinged roller in there to replace teeth.
Right. So this is basically back to front.
Yeah.
Whereas you had the
teeth
sprocket
are on
wheel on
the
the
track
others.
rather than on the sprocket wheel.
Okay, I get it.
If you tension the track too much, the roller would catch the top of the tooth and not roll either way.
So it would just... I see what you mean. It wouldn't have
It would
room to
snag.
move within it.
It would snag, pull itself too tight, and break the track.
I get it.
So loose track made them work a lot easier. And if you ever hear a T-34 running, if you try and ignore the engine noise, all you will hear off the track is clackety, 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 because it's just the teeth slamming into the sprocket wheel as it's driving along.
All right.
So
lower hull?
Yep. So we have the track, so we're moving on to the lower hull. We have another little spare bit of track here, a couple of stowage pieces.
Yep.
We then have these beautiful large road wheels. This kit, unlike Sherman, has the front and the rear wheels already on this part. So these tracks just go on top and
pinch
bottom
together. And just whenever you are building these guys, I will say one thing. Make sure and just take a little time on these and pinch and hold for a while, just to let it all set and settle.
Because otherwise you'll come across a gap, and the gap will be so obvious to your eye every time you look at it because it just won't be consistent.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have the beautiful big road wheels, and
there's some really nice detail inside those.
I love the look of T-34 road wheels. Just I don't know why. There's just something big and brutish about everything about T-34.
Yeah. Right, well, let's get on to the business end.
On to the business end. Right.
So
we have pieces. Now, this isn't what's in Sherman, which is funnily enough, we have a tank commander.
Ah.
So we actually have a guy popping out of the hatch, and he has his arms and his head there.
Yeah.
We have the extra fuel tanks that will be sat either side of the rear of the hull.
I assume you just pick two and move on?
You pick two, glue them together, and then you can place them anywhere you want along here. There should be 4 areas, but it's actually modeled as 3, so you have all 3 there.
Okay.
Moving further up, we have a bit for the gun mount. We'll get to that in a minute. We have more fuel drums here, which will sit on the back of the hull.
You actually missed the gun.
I'm getting to the gun.
All right.
I'm teasing you.
Calm down.
I'm teasing you.
Calm down.
So that's the commander's hatch.
Yep.
That's the gun mantlet.
Yep.
Which is very narrow when you look at Sherman's. You know, Sherman's is very wide and T34's is quite narrow.
Yeah, but it's the actual turret design, because the gun actually seems to be set to the outside of the turret, whereas the gun on T34 seems to be sort of molded into it.
Yep. Then we have the gun barrel, which is a nice big long gun. And the reason it's called T30-45, if you didn't already know, is because the gun is 85 millimeters.
Right.
How original a naming convention is that?
I've never attributed any military with a great amount of brains whenever they're naming stuff.
Exactly. Except for the British, when they went, we need a 17-pounder, let's call it Firefly.
Yeah, good call.
Awesome. So we have the turret.
Yep.
So we have the lower and the upper turret. And it's a very nicely shaped turret as well. You have to give the Russians that. It's a very nice shape.
Yeah, it's a very clean shape. Although this does have the 2 hatches at the top. Did these not get the nickname Mickey Mouse tanks?
Mickey
for
Mouse,
having the 2 big turret hatches that just looked like his ears?
A couple of historians think it was a joke by the T-34 designers that they would put 2 hatches on that would look like Mickey Mouse ears, you know, so that it was sort of communism rolling into battle, jokingly playing around with the capitalist image of Mickey Mouse. Okay.
Well, that's a little bit strange. You can argue that out in the comments, guys.
It's a fun thing for historians to argue about, because it sounds hilarious enough to be plausible.
Yeah, I think it's one for Mythbusters.
Yeah, absolutely. It's plausible.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, onto the upper hull. So if we have a look down there.
Onto the upper hull, you'll find a lot of similarities with the layout of a Sherman in this. You have the driver on the left, you have the bow gunner on the right.
Yep.
You have the hull, which will have the crew compartment directly behind it, and the engine compartment at the rear. What makes a T-34 so iconic? There's no crew hatches in the top of the hull. The only way they have in or out is through the front hatch of the driver or through the turret.
Yeah.
Again, very nicely molded. The only gripe I have with this is that the tow cables look too tidy. They look too symmetrical in my mind.
Yeah, it's sitting too clean, too flat.
Yeah, it feels a little flat.
Well, I mean, like if we turn this around so everybody can actually see what we're on about, it's here, guys, because it's coming up off the front, nice 90-degree turn, 90-degree turn, back, and a 180 back on itself.
Yeah.
You know, and I will agree with you, that does look just a little bit too clean.
Yep.
We then have the back of the tank as well. So what's this?
So which bit?
The
big
circular
bit
bit
at the back?
Yeah, circle bit.
This is the only access you have to the tank's transmission.
Right.
For combat repairs, you would open this bit here. It will come off in big bolts, and there's a big springed hinge. You pull this thing out, and it's about 2.5 inches thick. It's really, really heavy.
Right.
So you'd access the transmission system for the tank in there because it's rear-wheel drive, unlike Sherman, which is front-wheel drive.
Okay.
If you needed more maintenance than that, this whole back panel is on 2 hinges. You'll see maybe a couple of notches there.
Yeah, I see
You
this.
can unbolt the entire back armor, and the whole back armor will fold down on hinges.
All right. That's clever.
It helps when you're changing engines because all the bits on the top here are more or less tin work. You remove the tin work, you have a couple of armor plates in there just to stop shrapnel getting in, and then you have complete access to your engine.
Alright, so it's just unbolt it, slip it up and out, slip the new one in, off we go.
Yep. Again, that was down to maybe not so much crew comfort of making things easy to repair. It made it easy to build. Everything about T-34 is because it was easy to build.
So horse it out quick as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no crew comfort in T-34 at all.
No, I've seen 1 or 2 documentary pieces where there's people going around T-34 and T-34-85, and there's one point where the guy who's doing the documentary is trying to get out of that front hatch.
And he can't get
And it's
out.
just him going, come on, get out.
The drivers in T-34 and the assistant driver or the bow gunner had to be at least 5'0" to fit properly.
So they designed it so a 5 foot flat guy has to go in there.
They had no choice because if you were taller, your knees were hitting the front armor. If you were taller as a driver, you couldn't duck your head low enough to look out this hatch when it was open.
Really?
Your head was like you were staring at front armor and the hatch was here.
All right, Ron, you're driving. You don't get to shoot.
Exactly. So further along to the end of the sprue here, we'll just talk briefly through this.
I assume these are little vents?
No, these are 2 transmission pieces.
Okay.
Because what you'll see if I bring the bottom back in, see these 2 big notches?
Ah, so they go in there.
So that's where the final drive casings go.
Got it.
Which are these.
Okay.
Further up from that, we have the exhausts. which for a painter is brilliant practice for doing oil, grease, smoke, damage.
So what, just the way they sit in, it just allows you to do those nice effects around it?
Because every T34 I've seen that has ran for at least a day or an hour has spat so much oil and soot out of itself that they will leave just 2 perfect black trails down there.
So what, just 2 big skid marks off the arse end?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a very dirty vehicle.
Yeah.
I'll never say that
dirty,
again.
is it? Dirty. All right, well, what else do we have here?
We have I can't believe
we're going to bloody well break down if you keep this up.
You're doing this again to me, Justin. You're doing this again to me. So we have an antenna.
Okay, antenna.
We have a small antenna. I believe that piece there is part of the bow gun. Yeah,
okay.
That's
part of the bow gun.
That's the mount. I think that's the mount for the bow gun. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Is it a lamp?
Maybe.
Okay, guys, if you know what it is, post it below. We'll move on.
Yeah, we'll move.
Moving along, because we have another box of tanks to look at.
We then have the ball mount for the 7.62 or the 7.92 machine gun for the bow.
All right.
And we have a headlight.
Okay.
That is definitely a light.
Definitely a headlight of some sort.
Definitely a light of some sort.
Right, well, that's T34,
that's
85.
T34. We have the infantry sprue. Which,
oh, yes, I forgot.
Yes.
That almost went horribly wrong.
Almost went horribly wrong. Oh, this is cool.
Oh, what have we got?
Oh, this is cool. Hold this under the close cam for me, please, while I squeak.
Okay. So we have what appears to be a Russian weapon sprue.
Yes, what appears to be a Russian weapon sprue. What's that?
What? That's a Panzerfaust.
That's a Panzerfaust.
Yeah. Okay. Your point from earlier.
My point from earlier about
they
using
did just make
weapons.
each other's guns.
Yeah.
That's clever. You've got the PPSH down the bottom. I really like the design on it with a little sling.
Yeah.
Mosin Nagant, yeah?
Mosin Nagant. That is not the Mosin Nagant. That is one of the automatic rifles, which I do not know the name of because I am not good with Russian weapons.
That's the first.
So comment below, please, if you know what the semi-automatic Russian rifle is.
Yeah, we then have the...
Is it an STG?
Possibly. Comment below.
Could be.
Right, I assume that's the Nagant then.
Yep, so
which
that's
is the standard rifle.
Yep, so we have the Mosin Nagants there, which are your typical bolt action rifles.
Yeah, which were also used as sniper rifles.
They have sword bayonets on them, which are friggin' cool.
Yeah.
Really long, pointy bayonets. They were probably about nearly 2 foot long in some cases. These guys, when you seen these guys charge across the field with all that, you'd be like, I'm out of here.
I don't know if it's a good idea to turn your back on 2 feet of steel that's coming right behind you.
Hopefully there's a machine gun with you that can help.
Hopefully. Right, we've got another one of the automatic ones.
Yep.
We've then got a couple of grenades, I think, up the top here.
I believe so, those are grenades,
yeah.
Yep.
Don't know what the hell that is.
A very big grenade.
A very big grenade.
It's either a very big grenade or it's one of the anti-tank magnetic mines.
Okay.
Possibly one of those.
Okay, we then have a couple of bipods.
A couple of bipods, which are probably for...
I'll assume they're for some form of machine gun that's here.
Probably have a light support weapon, or actually it's for this thing.
Okay, we'll get to that in a sec.
Yes, we'll get to that.
What's this round thing?
That's the magazine for a machine gun.
Okay.
Which is there.
Okay.
Which has the round thing already on it.
I see. All right, we then have a little pouch. We have this,
the earlier
PPSH without the drum mag.
And it's the earlier version of the PPSH because there was 2. There was the 42 and I think there was the 40,
right,
the 41.
It's this bit here.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a couple of packages here.
Those are more ammo tins, probably for PPSH ammunition.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a range of different revolvers and handguns and binoculars.
Yep.
Where am I now?
You're over this side.
I'm over this side of the sprue now.
So a couple more Mosin Nagants.
Yeah, down the bottom. We have their light support weapon.
Yep.
We have this. I assume this is an anti-tank gun of some sort?
This is an anti-tank rifle. This is I think it's probably an 11.2 millimeter, which basically is 50 caliber to us in...
That's it there.
Us in the West. These things had no recoil suppression whatsoever. So
how does that work?
If you didn't fire it right or you didn't set yourself up right, you're walking away with a dislocated shoulder.
Yeah. How does that work that it has no recoil suppression?
You let the gun jump. You fire it and you let it jump.
How is that in any way accurate?
It's accurate when it fires. But, interesting point, these rifles were the reason that Germany made Scherzen.
Really?
Mm-hmm. All that side plating, all that side standoff armor.
So from this one weapon
was because of that.
Right.
Because in the early war period, they were using these against the side armor of tanks, German tanks, which is only 50 millimeters thick.
Right.
These things were either penetrating straight through, or they were causing spall on the inside and injuring a lot of crew.
If you don't know what spall is, it's basically whenever something hits the tank on the inside, it essentially shatters and you have shrapnel everywhere.
Yeah, it creates a scab of metal off the inside facing of the armor plate.
Yeah, we then have a few more motion against at the top, and that's it.
That's it.
Right, let's put that out the way.
We have the infantry sprue.
Yes, and I think that these are designed to sit on the vehicles, because I'm looking at the back and I'm seeing some of them have flat components on them.
That guy's lying on his chest, so I think he's the anti-tank gunner. I think he's the anti-tank rifle gunner. Yeah, now, this is obviously, well, pretty obvious to my eyes anyway. I think this is one of the more just a standard infantry sprue.
Okay.
But the poses are in such a way that you could probably make them fit.
I love the idea of having them ride the tanks.
Yeah. You see a lot of the footage of the guys stood on the back of T34s, and as the T34 advances, everybody hops off at the same time and advances with it under fire.
I mean, like, it's a very nice infantry sprue.
It is a nice infantry sprue. It shows off the Russian uniform very, very adequately, because the Russian uniforms were just so simple and so basic. It was just a quilted tunic and a quilted pair of trousers and a pair of jack boots. And
off you go. Here's your rifle.
Pretty much, here's your rifle.
You get your rifle, you get the spare ammo for when he dies.
Yeah, in Stalingrad.
Yeah, if you've ever seen Enemy at the Gates, it really shows it off really nicely.
Yep. Quite a gritty movie.
So yeah, a surprising role for Jude Law.
Yes. So we have their entrenching tools, their ammunition packs. See, you can tell already, I don't know the Russian equipment that well. We have the bodies and the heads. It's essentially what you want for the infantry sprue is basically everything you need except the weapons. And again, you have the paired arms, so you have to be careful.
Hang on, everything except the weapons?
Well, the weapons aren't on the sprue.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
One thing. Oh,
we'll not argue.
One thing.
Yeah,
where is it?
I'll be fine.
An arm with a Molotov cocktail.
Sounds legit.
Awesome.
Sounds legit.
Awesome. That's cool. I hadn't noticed that.
Why do I think you're going to steal that one arm and just one guy to build and paint it up?
No, I'm going to put it on the tank commander. I'm going to have the tank.
You're going to have your tank
commander.
commander.
Drive me closer. I wish to hit them with my Molotov cocktail.
We're really doing that bit?
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys. That is
T34.
T34 85. We're going to move on here. We're going to get on to the... Okay, fine, show off the transfers. Every time.
It comes with transfers. It comes with transfers for the 5th Guards Tank Army as well, which is the big crest.
Right.
As well as the red stars and the numbers.
I'll assume this is a very famous tank company.
It's the 5th Guards Tank Army, which was developed out of several...
Wait.
Army.
Yeah, Army?
Army. Several divisions put together to create a tank army. I believe 5th Guards had maybe something like 800 to 900 tanks.
No, I've heard of tank division. Tank army?
Yeah. So you have several things. You have tank platoon.
Okay.
You have tank regiment.
Yep.
Goes from regiment to division.
Yep.
Or regiment to whatever. You get to division, which is maybe 400 or 500 tanks.
Okay.
Division goes to army. Army goes to corps.
Okay.
So if you had a tank corps, which some of the German divisions did, so you had a Panzer Corps, the corps would have 5 tank divisions in it.
Okay. All right, so, guys, this just gives you a better idea of how these things broke down during the war.
Everything in Russia, when you go to research the Russian campaign, even if it's Barbarossa, even if it's Bagration at the end of the war, or the final push into Berlin.
I'll assume unit sizes are just bigger.
Unit sizes in the Russian army go from divisions at the start to corps at the end.
Okay.
Marshal Zhukov was in command of 4 armies by himself.
Yikes.
Which broke down into maybe 2 or 3 corps. Which
right,
broke
so
down
we're talking
into
about
5 or 6
thousands of machines?
Yeah.
So,
Marshal Zhukov's attack into Berlin was with 1,100 tanks.
Okay, sounds about right. Right, can I end it now?
Yes, you can end it now.
Right, guys, we're going to take a very quick break. When we come back after the break, we're going to be having a look at the British tank troop. Stay tuned.